Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, November 29th, 2022 Public Works Committee meeting. Now is time for roll call and determination of quorum.
Lehman. Here. Evans. Here. Roberts.
Here.
Ham. Here. Nordstrom.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Now is time for the adoption of the agenda. Have a motion by Councilman Lehman, a second by Councilman Evans. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Now it's time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue, not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. I will open general public comment. There is nobody to speak on it, so I will close it. And we'll move on to consent items, items 1 through 14, and I will open it up to Public Works.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're going to be tag teaming today. I will be addressing items 2, 6, 8, 9, and 10, and City Engineer Roger Hall will be speaking to the other 6 items. So jumping right in with item 2, this item authorizes the Public Works Director to accept a deed for a reservoir lot. This is an existing reservoir. This is the city's Elkville Water Reservoir. In 2008, the city entered into a covenant agreement and acquired easements for the reservoir. The property owner at this time desires to sell the property, and per the agreement, the easement area needs to be platted in and deeded, or platted and deeded to the city. This action will allow this to occur for the property owner. Next item on my list is item 6. This is an advertising authority for bid for well 10 and 11. These are equipment replacement projects. On well 10, we're going to replace the pump and motor and the electrical equipment. On well 11, it will be replacement of the electrical equipment. Next item is item 8. And this item authorizes the mayor and finance officer to sign an amendment with Burns and McDonald. This item allows for the completion of the solid waste master plan. Early last summer, council approved pausing and the finalization of the solid waste master plan because at that time we were having unprecedented changes in the economy. Lots of dynamics were going on both with the cost of doing services and finding equipment as well as staffing at solid waste. So we put a pause on that. At this time, we now believe it's appropriate to go ahead and finalize and finish up that solid waste master plan. So this document is an amendment to go in, update the data to reflect those cost changes and those dynamics, and finalize the master plan for solid waste. Next item is item number 9. And this is a resolution authorizing the mayor to submit an application for funding, SRF funding, for the solid waste facility. This is just another step forward in the funding package for a new cell construction and an improvement to the gas collection and control system and flare replacement for our solid waste facility. Authorization or submittal of the financial package does not obligate the city to the funding. It just allows the resolution to authorize us to submit the funding application to the state. Item number 10
Or 9, I mean, because that wasn't.
is a authorize staff to bid for 2 pickup trucks for the water division. These are actual replacement vehicles for the water billing group at the water division. And with that, those were my 5 items, so I'll turn it over to Roger Hall.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Item number 3, this is a request to lower the percentage of work required by the prime contractor to perform with their own organization. We have a specification required that they do 50% of the work. We think it's the benefit of the city and entice more contractors to bid the work to lower that to 35%. We think it would severely limit our opportunity on contractors, and we want to get the best price possible with the most people bidding. Number 4 is also the same thing on well 10 and 11 that Stacy just spoke to. We think it's beneficial to the city because of the different kinds of work that are involved in doing this to lower it. If we have a prime contractor doing 35% and managing the rest of the work. Number 5, this is the staff to authorize bid for Reservoir Road, also referred to in number 3, for the manhole Reservoir Road rehabilitation and manhole repair project. Estimated cost is $800,000. This primarily is goes from Rapid Creek south about 3/4 of a mile towards Southside Drive out there. It's a primary access out there. We have our sewer main in the road, and we're going in to do some manhole repairs and to fix the road. It's gotten a little rugged on us. So, number 7 is a request to seek proposals for engineering services for Sedivy Lane sanitary sewer improvements. This was a improvement identified by the Sewer Wastewater Utility Master Plan, and it runs from Highway 44 south, down Sedivy Lane, past St. Charles, past St. Andrew, through St. Patrick Street, and down a little bit south of St. Francis Street. So it's a pretty big project all in all. This is identified as a critical need to gain us some capacity out in that area. Number 11, 3-year contract with Esri. That's one of our vendors for our GIS software in our GIS department. This is a pretty routine request. Every 3 years we have to renew the license. $62,000 a year. I can't tell you exactly what Esri does. I'm not a GIS guy, but the last one, number 12, request from KTM Solutions on behalf of John and Lucine Ziegler for a variance to waive requirement to install sidewalk along Roland Drive, Karstens Drive, and an undeveloped portion of the section line right-of-way per city ordinance. This is out south of Hart Ranch and east of Neck Yoke Road out there. It's a pretty rural area. There are no other sidewalks in the area, so we're recommending approval on that. I'll be available for questions.
Mr. Evans.
I have a couple questions on several items, actually, concerning, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, the lowering percentage of work makes sense, but I've had some calls concerning liability, and without anybody having the plurality, I guess, the majority of the work, 50%, how is our contract structured so if something is defective, who takes the blame? Is one person specified still as like the person that's responsible for the overthing and the warranty and all of that stuff? These are the calls I'm getting concerning that. So how does it work if there's like a warranty recall? Whose chunk of it is it?
Chairman, if I may. That's an excellent question. We hold the prime contractor responsible. They're required to carry the insurance certificate, they're required to carry the warranty bond and everything else. So it is their liability. And I think we spoke before about this lowering of percentage. Using Reservoir Road as an example, there's a lot of components to this, but no combination of components can get us over that 50%. You know, we've got asphalt paving, we've got manhole repairs, we've got grading, gravel, different skill sets. So that's why we look at all these things like that. But to answer your question directly, it is the prime contractor. They hold the insurance certificate, they hold the warranty bond, and we do track that for, you know, the warranty for 2 years. And obviously with the well equipment, I can probably speak to Stacy's stuff here with the well 10 and 11, if the materials have additional warranty, you know, like sometimes you buy a washing machine that's got like a 5-year warranty, we track those also. So that still comes back to the prime contractor.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
exactly right, and I figured as much, but I just wanted to make sure it was out there. On number 5, Now, I've received some calls from people out there, and I've driven it. In fact, I was out there again last night. That road, I'm not really familiar exactly with what year was completed, but I was told it was somewhere in the 2018, 17 range. Then you get on the old portion that the county constructed 30 years ago, still in better shape. I'm a little bit concerned, and from what I understand in my investigation, the plan is to fix some of these. The road is heaved and hoed, and manholes have either sunk or been exposed and been hit and has broken the concrete culvert below it and everything to do that. But as I drive down that road, it's like a roller coaster ride, and there's more. And what is the plan to repair that? Because I heard, and I may be incorrect, that the plan is to just do an overlay of asphalt or something. But it's apparent to me that the substrate, whatever's going on down below that, is dysfunctional because the entire road is just so bad. Now, the city evidently constructed that at the time that sewer was put in. So all these questions I'm asking, you can correct me if you wish. But to me, we need to do a little more research on what that road is really doing there, because just overlaying something is not going to solve the problems of that road. It's a mess. And, you know, when I grew up around construction, my dad probably paved 2,000 miles of interstate highway. I grew up from age 6 around this stuff, so I know, I kind of have a feeling for it, you know? And that is, there's something wrong down there. Could you fill us in on the details of that project?
Chairman, if I may. Well, Mr. Evans, you're correct. The road is in rough shape. We have done quite a bit of research on this. The acceptance date of the road was 2018. It was reconstructed in the fall of 2017 and in the spring of 2018, and finally accepted in the spring of 2018. So the road's coming up on, what is that, 5 years old now, okay? The manholes, we put in fiberglass manholes, relatively new technology to Rapid City. They have failed, okay? The road is rough. As far as the substrate goes, we've investigated that. We've gone out, we've done our coring, we've consulted with our geotechnical engineers. We've done several analyses of the materials out there, and our geotechnical engineers, feel that the substrate has settled in the 5 years to about 97 to 98% of its final, okay? So that happens over time. If you're, you know, and we have problems out there. So we've done all that research that you were just speaking of. We've gone our due diligence above and beyond. I should tell you the other part of this project, you know, we talk about a mill and overlay, but the manhole specifically, we're going in on every manhole and conducting a repair. And what we're basically doing is putting a collar over the manhole and adjusting the final grade to the roadway. And we're going to provide some drains for any water that gets under the road at that point to get out of the roadway and into the ditch line. So after doing all of our analysis and completing what we call the CBR, the California Bearing Ratio, is what we base soil strength on. Our engineer's best opinion right now is the road is completed settling. It's not going to move much more. I'm not going to say it's not going to move any more, but it's not going to move much more. And the mill and overlay saves the city a great deal of money and protects the existing investment we already have. We already have investment of gravel. We already got an investment of pavement out there. So we want to preserve as much of that as we can. We're going to end up with a stronger roadway, and here's why. If we say right now there's 5 inches of asphalt out there, in some places we're going to mill off 2, in some places we're going to mill off none, as you experienced by the ride. You weren't the one that tried to hit us out there last night, were you? We were out there last night meeting with some landowners. That's about when we were there, standing beside the road. It was dark and cold, by the way. No, I had my flashers on, Bill, come on. But anyway, so we're gonna end up with some places, we're gonna end up with 6.5 to 7 inches of asphalt, a much stronger road, okay? Where the asphalt will come back to 5 inches will be on the edges. You know, and you saw in there where the edges kind of melted. The other thing that we're gonna do to enhance the ride of that road is to what we call a profile mill, okay? We've consulted with several industrial builders, I can't remember the name of the other one out of Wyoming, milling contractors. So they're gonna be held to a standard to mill that to a certain grade and a certain slope. It's not gonna be the standard, just go in and mill whatever's there, take 2 inches. And then we're gonna come back on top of that, after we mill that surface off, and try to create a crown in the road. You know, we create a crown so water can shed off the side of the road and into the ditch line. So we're gonna create a crown of about a 2% side slope, that's our standard, and rehab that entire road. But like I said, the substrate, you're absolutely correct. The entire roadway is based on the substrate. We've got a good substrate. We feel the settlement is complete. We've done several cores, I can't remember, it's like 13 cores on the roadway, and analyzed the soil, and that's the best opinion we have right now from our experts. Did I answer all your questions?
Well, yeah, and that sounds kind of like fascinating technology if it works, and maybe this will be a good way to find out if it's going to work, because I've always wondered why, we have 7-foot thick concrete in some parts of the Audubon. They've been around for 100 years, 90 years, and perfect. And I've always wondered why we always insist upon tearing up the previous roadway, and usually it has to do with everything that connects to it and changing the altitude and everything. So this will be fascinating to see if it works. Perhaps that can be used in other projects. So that does answer my question.
I'd like to do a follow-up with you, Bill, just a little bit. The Audubon is a great example of roadways. The Germans build things a lot differently. I worked in Germany for 3 years. If you know, on the Audubon, the right-hand lane on the Audubon is for trucks. Trucks are required to stay in that lane. Trucks are the biggest damage to any of our roads. They overload, they do a lot of other things. The other thing the Germans do that's quite a bit different in the United States is they do what they call a perpetual pavement design. So if you need 10 inches of pavement, they'll go in with 12, and they're always milling and replacing that top lift. Just so you know, right now, we're working through our infrastructure design criteria manual. And one of our criteria that we are changing is we are going from a 30-year design life to a 50-year design life on our roadways to extend our dollars out. That sounds like a big change, but believe it or not, it's only 1 inch of asphalt on all of our roads. So that is a huge improvement in our investment of our infrastructure. So we will be able to go in with that now 6-inch minimum roadway, mill off the top 2 inches and replace the top 2 inches on a more frequent basis and extend our tax dollars farther into the future. So,
Well, that's good to know. It still sounds kind of thin compared to that 7.5 to 12-foot thick pour my dad did when he built the Glasgow Air Force Base up there in Montana. Had to design it to withstand I don't know how many megatons, but it's quite a pour.
that's airplanes too, Bill.
Yeah, I know. Anyhow, and one more thing about this, number 8. Exactly what is this master plan? I know we've voted on things and we've gone through it. I don't remember really.
We had lots of discussion.
We've had lots of discussion, and but I don't know if we ever come up with a final plan we all agreed with, did we?
It's because, go ahead.
Go ahead,
You can
explain.
answer the
Maybe
question.
maybe I'm just missing the point of this, so.
Thank
I'm
you,
just
Mr.
full
Chair.
of little questions today.
Yes, we had engaged stakeholders, council members, and had developed, we'll call it a path forward. So the report was at I'm going to call it a 90% complete state at that point, to where we were ready to either finish it, or what we came up with was, I'll call it the pause. And part of the issues that happened there was, if you recall, there was inflation was going crazy. We were having a lot of cost increases, and a lot of our ability to forecast and project 5 years ahead was getting very difficult. And therefore, we were concerned about putting a plan together that would basically, we knew was obsolete right then and that time. The other issue was staffing issues out at solid waste, and we went through a number of issues with staff and pay and the number of staff, FTEs. So we felt it was important to step back, take a pause, and let things kind of stabilize. And now we're at a point where we're saying, okay, we believe we can look in the crystal ball enough to come forward with a good plan that gives us good projections till, I think it's 2027, I'd have to look in the agreement, but it's to give us a look for 5 years to 2027. So we think the data is much better now, plus our staffing needs and our FTE counts at what we need to run a facility of our caliber at the solid waste is accurate. So that's really what we're doing, is we're getting the current data. We're not going back and revisiting a whole bunch of decisions that were made. So the decisions on what the stakeholders did as far as the direction is still intact. It's just more or less updating it.
Is this the same firm that did that study for $890,000 a couple years ago? Or is this a different group?
The exact same study.
So, well, he said it wasn't finished then, but it's finished now, or they're going to keep working on it, and then we'll either accept it or deny it later on. That's what's a little confusing about it, because he never really did come to final consensus on anything that I recall. But this is the group that did the study from Sioux Falls, was it?
This is a national firm, Burns and McDonald Engineering, and then they had a subconsultant, FMG, as their local contact. Original contract was approximately $700,000. This is now bringing it to that $830,000 mark, and they've experienced the same cost increases and things with their staff and their labor too. And then to go back and we're going to use 2022 data. So we have very good data, and the timing is very nice right now because we're coming up to year end. So by doing the amendment now, we're going to be able to use all the data and the costs that have occurred through 2022. So that's where the amendment is to.
Okay, so when we see this final plan sometime, how long, what's the timeline on them being finished with it?
Completion date is scheduled for, I believe, early summer. Let me double check here. They have a completion date of May 31st, 2023.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Nordstrom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Mr. Titus. Number 6 is, can you give me a status report on, will this bring up, especially well number 11, bring us up to full capacity? We're ready to go, and everything will be back online again?
The answer is yes. We have another project that's in the works. It's a VFD replacement at our Well 12 project. Well 12 is currently operational, but that VFD is old and we need to do a replacement there. So there's another project out there to do a VFD, but once that's done and these two projects, our wells should be up and operational, and we've taken care of the old equipment replacement on these projects.
Thank you. And just a general comment for both of you is that the, I'm involved with the IDCM updates. So is the county roads that the city takes under advisement or will be taking into annexation, will there be some IDCM issues that we're going to have to deal with at the IAG? I'm throwing a lot of acronyms around.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how to answer that directly, Richie, because when we annex an area, you know, we assume responsibility for a lot of those roadways. So anything that would be constructed in those areas would have to meet our IDCM. I will say that right now, you know, we are enforcing the 3-mile limit. So anything that's constructed within the 3-mile limit is being constructed in accordance with the current IDCM. And then when this one gets adopted in, I'm looking at March or April timeframe for you guys to see it at the Public Works and Council, they would fall under the new one. So this takes time. I mean, we don't move at rabbit pace. You know, we're more like the tortoise sometimes, so.
So the primary reason that brought it up is because of what's taking place with Reservoir Road going down to Southside.
Yes, sir. That won't occur at the IDCM. Reservoir Road is kind of an anomaly. That's a county road. It remains a county road. We've met with the county engineers many times on this roadway, and we've met with all the homeowners out there. So we are putting it back as a rural county section. So at this point, that's a little out of our, earshot range to bring up to what we would consider full city standards with curb and gutter and all that at this point in time. That's still a ways out there. I mean, we're miles away from that being developed out there from what we see right now. I mean, everything's going north and east, as you guys well know, so. But yeah, no, we're bringing that to county standards. We've met with Joe Miller at the county and his engineers several times, and Joe and I talk at least weekly on different issues between the city and the county, so.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
On that same topic, just for my own background, so I can answer questions when people ask me, how is it that it actually came about that we ended up paving that road, which is county road, and the sewer runs down the middle? We have got now a request by Doyle et al. To run it along the side, so that maybe this doesn't happen in the future when we go to put the street in and the sewer is in. And so I think it's all related to the same kind of question. So we have a little better knowledge base, and it might seem logical then to do exactly what he's saying for that reason, because this does go right directly down the center of that, and you're hitting those manholes. I see that the water line, everything else is way off to the west on that same section. How did we ended up doing that? What was the process? And is that sewer currently active, or is it not being used as, and what does it actually drain?
A lot of good questions. I hope I can remember all of those. I assume you're talking about the TIF that just went through up north on Elkvale, where the sewer is going in beside the road?
Well,
Right.
I'm
Is
asking
that-
about
that's
the
one of them, correct?
Reservoir Road thing, but that would relate to the
Elkville,
thing that
yeah.
we're talking about with council now.
Excuse me. Our standard is to put the sewer in the center of the roadway. That's our design standard, obviously. The Reservoir Road project was a little unique. That's a major line from the city to the treatment plant out there. We were limited to working within the section line right away out there, so we only had 66 feet, which with the landowners out there, as you've obviously talked to several of them, they did not want us to disturb their properties, okay? They're ranchers, that's income to them. So that's why we ended up in the center of the road, because we were literally limited by where we could build out there. As far as the one up north that's going in the ditch line, talk about the Elkvale Road, I think that's the one that Dane Boomsma and Doyle Estes just got approved for a TIF, correct? You have to remember that road, Elkvale up there, is a shared road between us and Box Elder. We own the southbound lanes and Box Elder owns the northbound lanes. So when it comes to a city sewer, we're once again limited on where we can put it. And in that case, the best place to put it is just off the shoulder, to be honest. You also must understand there's also a fuel, like a jet fuel line that runs up that shoulder. There's also a water line that runs just behind the fence line to the west. So really the only place left for that in the city of Rapid City limits is just off the shoulder up there. So to answer the second part of your question, that sewer line is not active yet. This is built in preparation for a connection back to the Elks Country Estates lift station off Jolly Lane. That, hopefully we'll be seeing that project come forth here in the next year or so to make that last connection. Elks, Stacy can correct me, but that Elk Country lift station off Jolly Lane is at capacity right now. And with all the development going on upstream, this line is getting more and more critical because it's a gravity line, and we obviously prefer gravity lines over lift stations just because of the cost related to both. So hopefully within the next, I want to say 12 months, you'll see this project come forward to connect these two. I can't remember the distance, 7,000 feet across there, something like that. Around about 1.25 miles, mile and a half between where this line ends there, just south of the bridge, back to Jolly Lane, cross country, literally across those open fields out there. So, and then when that comes online, we're able to make some corrections upstream to allow our flow, our capacities to meet the demands a little better. So,
Well, thank you, because it helps to have some knowledge of questions you're trying to answer for people, and you really don't know what's going on, but that makes sense now. I did spend the holiday in Denver, and I kind of marvel at some of the great planning that they were doing back in the 20s and 30s, laying out they're not even first-tier suburbs, it's the outskirts of the city of Denver. And I had to drive in from Old Lowry Air Base site that's been, rebuilt, turned into condos and houses and shopping centers and everything. I had to get down to near the Cinderella City area. That's Hampton and Broadway, right there at the south outskirts of, or south city limit of Denver. And the boulevard system they created back then when they laid this out with the breadth of the streets and the width and the beautiful boulevards, you can get 4 miles across these suburban parts of the city without having a stoplight. I mean, it's truly amazing what they did. The width of the streets are wide. They've got 4 lanes. They've got a gigantic median down the middle, and I was looking to see where the utilities were located, mostly in a place you wouldn't have to stop traffic to fix them. And they're all landscaped and beautiful, and I'm hoping, as I look at the way we do things here, we can come to a model more like that as this town starts to grow. Because back when this was laid out by the city planners in Denver, it wasn't a lot bigger than Rapid City is now, or about the same size. And so they've come up with something that's working 100 years later to get people across town without having to rely on freeways. And so the places that are intact with their infrastructure that was designed the way it was intended to be used really still functions. And so hopefully we can come up with some models like that that incorporate those design features. I think about the growth to the southwest. I think about the growth in other parts that we're not going to be able to get to with regular highway type things and freeways and stuff. But if we plan our arterials correctly, we can have the same kind of efficiency that Denver has in some of these outlying areas, particularly the east half of Denver. So if you're ever down there, just drives down some of these streets. I mean, they're really, truly amazing in how efficient they are even 100 years later after they were laid out. So that's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you. If we have no other questions on them, I will turn it over to Mr. Beegler.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll actually take the next 2 items. Item 13 is a small contract with FMG to do soil and concrete testing for the Dinosaur Park project. And item number 14 is a reappointment of 2 of the current members of the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, Tony Marshall and Karen Olson. They are members in good standing, and we'd be happy to have them reappointed for another term.
Thank you. If we don't have any questions on either of those 2 items, I'll look for a motion for. We have a motion by Councilman Evans, a second by Councilman Lehman. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Thank you very much.